This episode is for Friday, June 12th, 2015. I almost said 14. Holy crap. Get my years mixed up.
Still signing your checks that way?
Yeah, I had too much beer.
Yeah, don't know anything about that.
You might get there faster than me, man.
All right.
If you're not watching the video, we've got alcohol. So welcome. I'm Josh Owens. I'm the host, Josh Owens, and I've got a special guest co-host this week. Welcome back, Dean.
Hey, from Chicago, grooving it up.
So Rye was completely MIA. I texted him and I never heard back. So luckily Dean was able to fill in and save the day. Especially I was so crazy busy last week. I just couldn't do it. So
just call me Josh's little helper.
Nice. Got my Meteor shirt on today.
Yeah.
I gave a talk and someone's like, "Well, how do we get that shirt?" And I was like, "Oh, you can't get that shirt. That shirt's deprecated. They don't make that shirt anymore. You can get this shirt, but not that shirt." Yeah, so we've got an exciting show. There was 2 weeks worth of stuff to cram in, but I'm kind of in a hurry too today. So we've only got 4 stories, but they're good ones, I promise. And if you're not reading Crater and don't know about all the other 30 stories I had to choose from, what's wrong with you? As always, you can find this podcast. I never say this anymore. On meteorpodcast.com. You can find it on twitter.com/meteorpodcast. We occasionally do the tweeting there. So this week we're talking about Toot. That's awkward. Proposal to deprecate sessions, Meteor Security 201, and the Meteor Allow and Deny Security Challenge.
Dun, dun, dun.
Sunday. So, the Cuke tutorial, yes, that one was interesting. This was from, is there a name on it? Wow.
A lot of Cuke action going on lately, but I don't know. Zolvio, well, they're the package author, but they're not the blog author.
Yeah, I don't know who wrote this blog. Let's see. Maybe it's on Crater. This makes me sad.
Morwe.com. Don't know that.
So I hit the about link, and it totally didn't have the guy's name either. He's like, I make Meteor and Rails apps.
Well, what did this humble advisor of the community have to say?
Yeah, that didn't help either. I found his user account on Crater.
Huh.
It's the same name. Okay. So I don't know. I don't even know how to pronounce that. But
Mark Hurwitz.
There you go. Nice.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
You get an A+, gold star. So Mark wrote a post about getting started with Cucumber. And so number one, hats off to him, because my tutorial is sadly outdated, because in the world of Meteor testing, if it's more than a day old, it's too old. It's getting better. It's getting better. I will say that. But yeah, my Cucumber tutorial was way out of date. Sam did a major refactor on Cucumber, and Mark says here in the blog post, he took it as an opportunity to learn how to get going with things. And so I think he replicated some of the work that I had done, kind of showing how to do a login and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, again, I will say this every time. If you want to be a good developer, learn to test and write tests, that's it. That's all there is. That's the biggest secret to being a good developer, is writing good tests that function.
I like the addition of the word good, because at first it is all about getting some tests in and learning that workflow, which prior to being given the nice label TDD was also known as the scientific method. So it's the best method. But yeah, so anyway.
You're right. I mean, it's very much the scientific method, right? Because we can't know if we've improved things if we don't measure them first, right? And to me, testing is measuring to make sure we're getting the right output.
Mm-hmm. And the prediction that says, I predict that I'm going to get a red. okay, got a red. If you didn't, then, the do not pass go, right?
Yeah.
And then I predict that by fixing this, I'll get a green, etc.
Yeah.
So I'll also, not to take anything away from Mark in this tutorial, but I'll also throw a shout out to Sam Hatum for pairing with me on something that I was doing wrong all along, but it kind of just, because I knew Cucumber in a non-JavaScript environment, I missed certain things regarding that callback parameter that has to be passed into your steps.
Yep.
So whether it's called callback or done or finish.
Yeah. You still got to like call it or pass it on.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of like a game of telephone there. You always got to pass it on.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So did you guys talk about that in the Meteor Club Slack chat room, or how'd that happen?
Yeah, a little bit before he took it offline to pair with me for about like 30 or 40 minutes. And
nice.
It was good. So I think with tutorials like this one and the other ones that are, definitely getting out there now, people will be on the right path. It was not it was something that could have been avoided if I had followed a tutorial like this.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's why I wrote the tutorial too, right? I mean, the more we have these good examples out here, the more likely people are to read that and start writing tests. And I think that's the most important thing for our community, is to get behind testing and do a better job.
Yeah. What do you think when you find a package that is really useful and really awesome, but then you find out it has no tests for it?
Makes me a little sad. But, honestly, like, I'm not going to say like MDG does a better job either. I forked the other day MDG and ran the test suite for, the stuff I was going to work on, and there were failures. Like, it wasn't even working.
Oh.
And, just totally crashed. And so it had something to do with like new code that was in devel but wasn't in master yet or something, and it just didn't work. And so I commented out all those tests and then still got like a couple failures, and like it just, I don't know, in my pull request I said, hey, are your tests working? They're like, oh, they're not working for you. And it's like I was just asking for a CI link or something to kind of prove like it was working before my stuff started. But I don't know, they didn't have one. So
yeah
awkward. Yeah. No, it definitely makes me sad to see a package without tests said as a guy who tests none of his packages.
Well, it's a battle. We're all working towards it. So thanks for, advocating for the good fight, the good road.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So speaking of MDG, next story is deprecating sessions.
Yeah, speaking of the good road or the low road or the global variable road or whatever you want to call it, session is just, it's one of those things that you fall into right away in all the tutorials, and there are certain applications that make perfect sense to use it, and or something like it. And so I think what Abigail Watson started this hackpad about deprecating session.
Did she? I thought it was Sashko.
Really? I would hate to misattribute that.
Yeah, this is all Sashko.
I see. So there's just comments.
Yeah. There's a ton of comments. Mina and Sasha.
Yeah.
Lewis. I assume that's how you say it. Abigail, Vincent, Dominic. Yeah, there's quite a bit of comments in here, by the way. I read some of them, but
right, I read a lot of them, and I so to distill the issue down, there are packages that session is a thin wrapper around, and if we advocated for example, template level reactive variables, we could get better scoping. By using tools differently. Is that about it?
Yeah. So I mean, in my practical experience, the downside of session is the fact that, once people start shoving things there, you have no idea what's in there, who did it, has it been cleared out? Like, you always have to remember to clear out your sessions when you're done, basically. And it's just kind of like, if you don't, it could lead to weirdness, right? So if you leave a session in there and someone was on a page and it was indicating like a UI state, and they come back to that page, maybe that's a good thing that you tracked it, but maybe it's a bad thing too. I don't know, right? And so there's always we ran into bugs. We relied on it super heavily in the early days of us using Meteor differential. And, I probably about 2 or 3 projects in, I'm like, session just seems like a bad idea. And we didn't have Reactive R back then. So we just would kind of like track things on the template somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can, new up. I'm personally very interested in the lower level reactive primitives, like the Reactive Dictionary, which has that unfortunate name that I think is another part of the discussion.
I think Reactive Dictionary is a fine name, but this one's actually just called Reactive Dict.
Yes, and try mentioning that in a room full of people talking, and when the heads turn around because they didn't hear the T on that. I don't know. It's just one of those things. Saving a few letters doesn't add clarity to this for me at all.
Yeah.
So one of the proposals was reactive namespace, reactive.dictionary, reactive.variable, reactive.object. And I think it's a good discussion to be having about where to put in these things that kind of evolved over time, not necessarily to a standard naming convention, but could we standardize and do a little better on naming? Yes. Could we get rid of sessions from Meteor documentation? I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example, but I've worked in other frameworks where there's some ability to do something in the framework, and they're like, oh yeah, but don't do that. And I know you hate making that kind of statement and then having that tribal knowledge, but I don't know if it's feasible to get rid of session entirely.
You could. I think you just make a lot of people mad, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I think it's a noob crutch. That's right. What I tend to call it.
Yep.
And really, like, if I think back to it, I do show it in both my training class and my Cordova tutorial. And it's just, honestly, it's just easy. Like, I could just as easily do a global scoped reactive dictionary of my own. Nothing to say I have to use theirs.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, it's just a one-liner to replace it and put something else in place and kind of get your own little namespaces. And honestly, that was one of the suggestions Sasha put in there was reactive namespace. And I think that's a perfect name for it because that's really what you're doing, right? Like, it's just a big variable that you can carve out and shove whatever you want into it.
Yep.
That can be handy.
Yep. And naming is one of the hardest things in computer science.
Yep. What is it? There's 3 hard things in computer science. It's like caching and naming.
Yeah, and the third one is remembering what the third one is.
No, it's counting.
It's counting. Off by one error.
Yeah, exactly.
Happens all the time.
Okay. All right. So session, I don't know. Like, is there any practicality to deprecating it? I actually don't think so. I don't think we gain anything by removing it. I mean, it's just a one-liner global namespace, and I just don't think we're hurting anyone with it personally.
Yeah, I'd like to see now that template level variables and auto runs are a lot easier to use. Maybe courses will start teaching it that way, and session will be relegated to an afterthought, like the appendix.
Well, so I'll say, honestly, my Cordova tutorial, the latest revision of it uses template level subs. It's got auto run, and it's using reactive R's to kind of determine everything and redraw the map as it needs to. But I still use a session to grab the location. And frankly, that was just the fastest way to do it, session.set location, and it's reactive and it works. So,
well, and if that's the semantics, if you're on a game that has 20 questions, the current question for each person might be tracked in a session variable because that does represent, what they're on right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we're on a witch hunt here. There's better things to do, guys.
All right.
Just kidding, Sashko. Yeah.
So how can we make our apps more secure regardless of the variable names? I think actually having different namespaces is potentially a way towards security, but that's not what the Security 201 is about, is it?
No, I don't
All
know.
right. Break it down for us, Josh.
This post was from a jerk. I don't know. I'm just kidding. It was mine. So, I wrote a Meteor 101, Meteor Security 101 topic, and it was all right. I think it was good. It was kind of like the obvious stuff, like don't deploy with insecure installed. And in all honesty, like a lot of my blog posts come from like a real world, like I actually saw this happen. Like I saw a big public startup that had insecure installed and they were running in production with it. So, I mean, it's not crazy. I don't make this crap up. But Meteor Security 201, I did a security audit for someone, and we sat down for 2 hours and kind of went over things. And a lot of what I put into this article was kind of takeaways from, how and why this security is important and what you need to like trust and not trust. And I think the keys are here, on the server side, you need to trust this user ID. Don't pick an input and make sure you're keying your data off that user ID. And when I say that, I mean like find the user, or kind of if you think about it this way, like if we're looking at Twitter, I've got a user ID and then we've got a bunch of tweets, and those tweets probably have my user ID. And so don't just accept a user inputted user ID. Make sure that the logged in user has access to see those tweets, right? I mean, this is what we're talking about. And so like if they're private messages, you don't want to necessarily just release those to me. You need to make sure that they're allowed. So that was one of them, kind of verifying that user input and don't trust it. Also don't, iron router and using an on before action and not rendering something, that's not security. That's just you not showing some HTML if it's not allowed.
Right.
The true security happens on the publication. So you need to double check and make sure you don't publish the data if they don't have the access to it, so that's kind of important.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else did I put in here? Someone thought the allow deny rules applied to code that they were running in a Meteor method on the server, and that's not the case. Allow deny rules are only there to restrict the client from doing certain things or allowing them to do certain things. So you need to understand that when you're using a Meteor method, even if it's split and goes to both places, right, client and server, ultimately it's going to run on the server and commit whatever data you tell it to commit, and that's independent of your allow deny rules.
Yeah, and that's a subtle one because the Meteor method call, you can picture exactly where that is in the code, but and the server side code, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a little less easy to picture exactly where that endpoint that when the client updates its own MongoDB and that data syncs across, that's subject to the allow and deny rules. But maybe it's the wording that the Meteor API has, where you say companies.allow. It looks like it applies to the entire company's collection, but it really only applies to that automatic sync that's happening when you update from the client. Yeah, but maybe there's some clarity that can be gained in the way you structure that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think, for him, the problem was that, when you put all this stuff in your company's JS file or whatever, like it all sits there together and it looks like, oh, hey, this allow applies to this method. And that's totally not the case. You have to understand that any data committal you actually do happens on the server. And, that's ultimately where you have to rely on the security, this kind of stuff. And honestly, I think that was just the major theme of this post is Don't trust the user and only do things on the server.
Indeed. And furthermore, allow deny rules are tricky to get right.
They are. They really are.
I was one of the first to attempt to tackle the security challenge, but I didn't have time to go through with it. But man, did I learn some things by looking at these proposals. So background, of course, is that I'm just going to make up a name because I know I'm going to get it wrong. Slava Kim posted this Meteor Security Challenge, right? No, it was Sasha Grafe, wasn't it?
Sasha Grafe.
Grafe.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my Spanish R rolling, which doesn't belong in there. But nonetheless, the proposal to say, hey, here's a little security challenge. It's kind of like out of Telescope. People can like links, I believe. It's if you're familiar with a blogging platform, it's kind of like the Meteor forums. And can you make it so that people only can like once, and they can't delete other people's likes or set likes to arbitrary values, and you can only edit a post that's yours. You know, a typical set of business requirements for what is allowed to be done. And there were so many different approaches that people took, which then Sacha was kind enough to shoot holes in, actually, and then summarize the typical anti-patterns and mistakes that he saw. So this is so incredibly valuable.
You know what was funny to me is the fact that a lot of the solutions that had problems were like 5 or 6 line solutions, you know. One of them was pretty long, but still missed it. But like Luca, the user accounts guy, he just had like an allow call that he was close, but he still missed it, right? Like it was a one-liner, and he didn't get it. And then you go down and you check out my good buddy Pete Corey. Totally nailed it and got it right. But this thing's probably like, you know, I mean, with proper white spacing and readability, it's like 20, 25 lines, I bet.
Yeah. Well, and he factored things into, using the matcher part of Meteor, which I thought was a clever take on it.
Right.
The same things that allow for, checking arguments to Meteor methods. So that was a good use of that to reduce the, amount of, to segregate the amount of things that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that was interesting was, Luca came back and decided to try a deny rather than allow since his first failure. And he did a couple denies. And basically he had one update statement that said return true, or one allow statement that said return true. And then he had a bunch of denies that basically looked at the modifiers and made sure that they were valid. But he had 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. So again, pretty complex. And I'll just say, for me, if I saw this challenge, I'd be like, screw that. I'm just going to write a method.
Yeah. So, I feel like methods are not a silver bullet either. No. So what is it that you would get out of writing it in a method that would be liberating and better for you?
Well, in particular, the method would handle the one function, and you would hit. So to me, like what you're trying to do is replicate the Facebook kind of like post thing, right? And so you need to track both the user ID and increment the like count. And so all you have to do is call a method called, like post or whatever, pass along a post ID, and that's it. Just a post ID. On the server side, we'll already know the user ID and we'll already know the count and can just call increment on it. So, all we have to do is just run a check on the post ID and make sure it's one that they should have access to or something. And then we move on in life. They're not passing in any other inputs.
So for a compound document, instead of validating like the document as a whole, you could just have a method that modifies this part of the document with certain security rules.
Sure. Yeah. And it's server-side code, so you can trust it. That's the biggest thing here is with the allow deny, we're allowing the client to send in any old data. And if your allow returns true, and they did something nefarious in their statement, which anyone can issue a statement right from the console. That's the other thing most people don't realize is like you can just call Meteor, subscribe from the console, and get data that's available. So you got to think about that from a security standpoint. Same thing with the inserts and updates. It's just something that any old black hat can open up the console and do.
Get your black hat on.
Yeah. So, I teach the class and we build a follow button, and it's a very specific update to a very specific thing. We're tracking an array of IDs, and, we'd probably honestly increment a counter somewhere, and that's it, that's the perfect use case for a method.
Yep. And you can use these Mongo modifiers to increment. So there's no race condition if multiple likes come in at the same time.
Right. Totally. I should have been funny and responded to his security challenge with a method version. I still may do that. That would be pretty funny. So I don't know. It'd probably be like 3 lines of code or something.
Yeah, and then he'd be like, but I said only using allow and deny.
Well, I think he's kind of proving a point here, right? And he's not.
I thought he did it in a really good way. I think to put these kinds of easy to fall into errors, I think that kind of illustrates the point almost better than any blog post, because it has community content. And he's showing like how people, I think MDG should pay attention to this for structuring APIs, right? This is how people are trying to use it. This is the real world validation of, okay, you've written the docs, you've written the APIs, and this is what people are doing with them. Is that what you want? Or is, there a little more prescriptive advice? And that's how things iterate. I'm not faulting that for where it is.
Sure.
Allow deny is perfectly valid for certain types of collections.
Yeah.
But as things get complicated, here they are, the problems.
Yeah. So I'll say I had the pleasure of emailing back and forth with David Glasser from MDG. And I specifically asked him, because there was this was back when there was an actual security hole in the allow statement stuff that you could like bypass it. And they released an emergency patch for it. And I was like, I don't, honestly, like I find myself using methods more than allow deny. Can you explain the situation you guys envisioned using allow deny? And David Glasser responded and said that he feels like when he's prototyping an app, he'll use allow deny to kind of get started. And then once his security or his application or whatever gets a little more complex, he moves to methods for updating or inserting data.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty fair approach, I think.
And it's a similar, I think, paradigm with the session, right? There's a thing that you can use to get started, and then there's the thing you'll probably want to evolve into. And I think that's been part of Meteor's charter from the get-go, is that it's accessible to beginners.
Yeah.
And yet there are still growth paths into better things.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
How's that strawberry beer doing?
It's gone. I poured it upside down, but I'm not sure I got all the drops out of it.
I feel like I should disclaim that this was at least as much apple juice as it was whiskey. Okay, so
sure. Well, you still seem sober, so maybe.
Yeah,
All right. Well, first I want to say thanks for letting me put you on the spot there, Dean. Appreciate
Always pleasure.
And as always, I know we hit the Patreon mark to stop with ads, but I'd already secured a year of ads with Modulus, so we'll keep doing this till December. If you need hosting, check out modulus.io. You heard the ad in the beginning. They do a good job. Honestly, they've got a lot of smart guys. We had our last Cincinnati Meteor meetup there. It's kind of cool. Cool. They got kegerators, and their office is pretty cool. So check them out. And then, as always, if you want to be in that infamous Slack chat room, or just support this podcast in general, or creator in general, like just go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Meteor Club. And you can sign up there. $10 will get you into the Slack chat room. I think we're almost at 100 people in there now. So we've got some of the greatest minds like Dean in there, and Sam and Sasha. And we also have some people that are brand new to Meteor. So everyone's in all stages of learning and very hopeful and open to talking and chatting. It's always a fun time.
Love to hang out whenever I can.
Yep. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be back next week.
All right. Ciao.
This video has been a Meteor Club production. You can find out more information about Meteor Club and join the mailing list by clicking on the Meteor Club button below. If you enjoyed this video, you can also hit the subscribe button below and get more content like this. Thanks for watching.